Hi guys! Welcome back, or welcome to if you are new here. Today I'm going to be reviewing Verity by Colleen Hoover. This was the first book I've ever read from Colleen Hoover. I know she is a pretty popular book talk, but also just like generally popular author. So I was excited to finally dive in to one of her books. I didn't really have a lot of expectations going into it. Honestly, I think I thought all of her books were just like spicy romance books, but I was surprised by Verity. So the way that I am going to break this down is I'm going to talk about the premise at the beginning. I will go into my thoughts and then what rating I would give it. And at the end, I will discuss who I think would enjoy this book the most. I will also say I listened to this as an audiobook, so I will also be putting in my 2 cents on how I thought the narration was done and what I thought of it as an audiobook. Let's get into it. So the 3 main characters of this book are Lowen, Jeremy, and Verity, who the book is named after. Lowen is a struggling writer. She's published a couple of books. They have done fine, but she has run out of money. She doesn't really have anything going for her. Then we have Verity and Jeremy. They are a married couple. Verity is a very popular, famous author. She has a couple of books that have been out, and she is working currently on a series where she might be on like book 2 or book 3 she's like working on that right now, or she should be working on that. And then Jeremy is her husband. So this book starts out, we have Lowen, it's from her perspective, and she's just talking through how she has no more money, blah, 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 blah. And then this kind of traumatic thing happens, and she meets this guy who gives her her shirt because hers has blood on it. And that guy actually turns out to be Jeremy. They are reintroduced later that day when they are all in the same meeting, and that meeting is to discuss Lowen taking over as a ghostwriter or as co-authoring the rest of Verity's series that she has. I think there's maybe 3 more books that she would have to write. And the reason for this is that Verity actually cannot write anymore. She was in an accident in which she cannot write, she doesn't speak, and she is in need of like constant help to eat, drink, move, pretty much live life. She needs constant help and supervision with that. So the family and her publishers had reached out to Lowen and her, whatever that guy is, her book dude, guy who like oversees her books. And we're like, hey, we want you to ghostwrite or co-author all these books. Lowen doesn't really want to, she doesn't want that much attention. Jeremy really wants her to, etc., etc. Long story short, she agrees to, but only under a pen name and as a pretty much like a ghost. She doesn't want it attached to her herself at all. Fast forward, in order to get an understanding of where Verity was in her writing process, she moves in briefly with Jeremy, Verity, their son, and is going through Verity's office. She's trying to figure out, is there a plot that she had in mind? Did she have a manuscript already underway? One day when she is looking through, trying to find these manuscripts, trying to find, start the writing process, she comes upon an autobiography that Verity had written that is wild. Absolutely crazy, crazy. A lot of haunting and horrible truths that Verity writes about and that shock Lowen and makes her see Verity differently and Jeremy differently and all these things. So Time goes on. She is reading this manuscript. Should she be? she's reading this manuscript, she's getting closer with Jeremy, and Verity is also just like kind of like creeping her out. So that's pretty much the basis of this entire story. Is she's reading this manuscript, she's learning about this family, and she is also just falling in love with Jeremy. Jeremy's falling in love with her, and she's just like getting spooked by Verity because odd things are happening, you know. The TV was muted and then she leaves the room and then it unmutes itself when only Verity's in the room. Things like that, you know, it's just like eerie, weird stuff going on. So, my thoughts. I really enjoyed this book. If you if you had watched my best books of 2021, this made the list. This was one of my top, what, I think I did 8 or 10 or 12, somewhere in there. This was one of my top favorite books of 2021. And the reasoning for that is I find it hard for thrillers / suspenseful novels to actually keep me engaged and surprise me. I often feel like I figure out the plot twist pretty easily. And this one, it's such a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts, and you're just like on the edge of your seat. At the end of it, you're just kind of like, what? That's like literally how I was after I finished it. So I really enjoyed this. This was my first, as I said, my first Colleen Hoover book, and I did not expect this at all. As I had said, going into it, I really just thought these were overly hyped, you know, spicy romance books. I didn't really know what types of books Colleen Hoover wrote. And so I just was not expecting at all for it to be a suspenseful thriller type of romance. And I just think that that made it all the better, honestly. But also, even if you are going into it with like knowing it's going to be suspenseful, I still think you will enjoy this. Yeah, the twists, the turns, they're pretty great. So a little bit on my thoughts of the narrators and the narration style before I give my 1 out of 5 star review. This had 2 narrators, one for Verity and one for Lowen. The interesting way that this book was formatted was it would go in between, like one chapter would be Lowen and Jeremy and like what's going on in that life, and then the chapter would end with Lowen picking up to read part of the autobiography, and then that's when Verity's voice would come in. I think Verity, the narrator for Verity, did an amazing job. She had a great way of using her voice to add just like this like deep emotional feeling to the words and the writing. It really emphasized the storyline and the kind of harrowing stories that we were listening to. And I just thought, yeah, I think she just did a phenomenal job on that. As for I don't know what their names are. I could not tell you. But for the one who was doing Lowen, I think she did a really great job. She had to also do some of Jeremy's voice. She had to have a couple of different people that she was trying to narrate for, and I thought she did a really great job as well. So leads us perfectly into what my rating for this would be. I think I gave it a 5 star. This was primarily because, yeah, it finally executed on giving me some plot twists and some suspenseful elements that I had not seen or have not gotten from another like thriller suspense type of novel. I kind of like, you know, the romance was like fine. That's like not what pulled me in about this book at all. It really was the storyline, and that it was just so addictive. I could not put it down. So intrigued with figuring out what the heck was going on in this story. So I really, really enjoyed my time. It was a great introduction to Colleen Hoover. It honestly, like, it set the bar so high for her that it's kind of, was it a good thing? We'll see. Who I think should read this. I think people who like romance will enjoy this. It has that element there. We get to see and hear the relationship forming with Lowen and Jeremy, but we also get to see glimpses of Jeremy and Verity falling in love in the beginning of why and how they got together, which is really interesting. Who else? I think people who like suspense and thrillers will also enjoy this. I really think it keeps you on your toes, and it kind of is like you don't realize that it's going to be suspenseful or a thriller with plot twists until you're like there and it's hitting you in the face. So those are the 3 types of people that I think would really enjoy this. I think if you like listening to audiobooks, you will really have a fun time with this one. I think that they did a great job, and yeah, I just think it's a really fun, fast-paced, easy book to listen to. That is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this short kind of review of Verity by Colleen Hoover, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!